Welcome to another episode on My Money Adventures podcast, the go-to show for all things finance, business, and retirement conversations in Lesotho and Southern Africa. In today's episode, I have a guest who has been here before, probably 3 years ago, and he is blazing the trail when it comes to business. When we talk about young trailblazers in the business space who are doing amazing work, this is the guest today. And as is tradition, he is going to introduce himself, right? So, good afternoon and good welcome to the podcast again.
Thank you.
How do
Good
you
to
feel?
be back. Good to be back.
Good to be back, yeah?
Yeah, no, it's been a minute.
I think at some time it felt like I was lying. I get it. We'll do this podcast episode. Because every
Yeah.
single time I'll see, I'll be like, yeah, we need to shoot. We need to shoot. We need to shoot. We need to shoot. How are you doing?
No, man, I'm good. Too blessed to be stressed.
Too blessed to be stressed.
No complaints.
No
No
complaints.
complaints.
So let's start with introductions. For people who have not watched that video that I'll obviously plug into this one, let's start with who you are.
Okay, and so my name is Tekane Ledimo, and I'd like to refer to myself as a serial entrepreneur.
Serial entrepreneur.
Yeah, finance enthusiast, aka Mr. Leverage.
Mr. Leverage. Leverage in debt.
Leverage in debt.
Ish. Yeah, dropping bars already. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, serial entrepreneur. So 3 years ago when we spoke, you mentioned that you were, in fact, let me pause with that question, right? How are you arriving today? Oftentimes I talk about mental health, and when we do the check-ins, I'll be like, hey, Tekane, how are you doing? Like sharp, but how are you really doing? Outside of too blessed to be stressed, but how are you doing?
Today?
Yeah.
No, today I'm on top of the world.
On top of the world.
I think mentally I'm in a good space. I am on top of everything to the extent that I can. But, you don't just get there.
Yes,
You
I was
go
about
through-
to ask what the process is.
Yeah,
what
you
the
don't
daily
just get there.
routine, the rituals and all of that.
Yeah. Actually, I was reflecting back on the last podcast that we did. And I was looking at the question when you asked me about mental health. I think at that time I was in a space where, for lack of a better word, I also didn't know what mental health meant. I think for the longest of times I thought mental health is about people who, etc. But I think over the last 3 years I've been tested so much that now I appreciate mental health. When people say go see a psychologist, go see a therapist, I 100% relate to that story. And it was in the context of business. So just a short summary of basically what I went through, what I was dealing with. So as you know, I've got a fintech company in South Africa. We were going through a transition period, basically. We were going through an equity raise. So the raise was a mezzanine structure, right? So it was debt and equity. And this was with one of South Africa's largest DFIs, development finance institutions. And, there's bureaucracy, the structures within the organization. So I think it took about 4 years to conclude that deal. 4 years.
Sure.
Right. And during that period, I was tested mentally, And I think this is one of the biggest in retrospect, one of the biggest mistakes we make as human beings. When you're working towards something, when you're trying to achieve something, you start to realize it as if it's here today. So you start living today's life as if you've realized that dream or that goal or whatever the case may be. And then it just keeps on ticking on. You prepare your life to fit for this, right? So you keep on, how do I put it? You keep on waking up every day, showing up every day as if you're living that truth or you're living that reality that day. So it literally, it took a lot mentally. There was so many changes, so many complications, so many things to comply with from a legislative point of view, from a legal point of view, so many frameworks. South Africa is very, 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 very structured in terms of the law and everything. So
and the compliance is very hectic.
No, the compliance is hectic.
Compliance is very hectic.
Literally, it took every single ounce of, energy out of my mind, to the point where even post achieving, getting to the other side, there were moments where I had to still pinch myself, is this real?
Did we actually
did we actually do this? And I think it goes, people often say there's a very thin line between faith and insanity. So I was leaning more on the faith side, to the point where I'm like, yo, like, am I being delusional? Am I not seeing? Is this not gonna happen? Is this not gonna happen? But I think in retrospect, you get to realize, to achieve great things, you have to be tested.
You have to be tested.
And once I got over that episode, good space, like I'm saying, too blessed to be stressed.
Too blessed to be stressed. And talking about being tested, one of the things that was happening during that season of your life is you were doing your postgraduate diploma in development finance, right? And you've graduated, so congratulations to that.
Jesus, that feels like a lifetime
It
ago.
feels like a lifetime away. But it's important to bring it back because during the time we had the first conversation, that's one of the things that was also causing an imbalance in your life because you're managing business, you are also trying to manage your studies. So how has that postgraduate a diploma, even though it feels like a lifetime ago, changed your life, your business? How has it changed your life and your business since then?
Let me bring it closer to home.
Yes.
Right. So, okay, quick answer, tremendously. So there was a module within the program called Banking in Emerging Markets. So we had to do like a research proposal, and I decided to do it on Lesotho's financial ecosystem. So had multiple interviews with the regulator, under different departments, banking, non-banks, pensions, the works. So I think it was an eye-opening experience in the sense that through the one-on-ones that I would have with different role players and stakeholders, I got to see and learn where the financial ecosystem in Lesotho is headed. So I had first-hand experience in terms of how do I position myself, how do I position my business for where the ecosystem is going, right? I think an example was at that time there was a bill that was about to be passed on how pension funds, how capital within pension funds is to be deployed. I think the then governor wanted most of the money from the pension fund to be invested locally.
Sure.
So there were opportunities that opened to say there's going to be a lot of fund managers, there's going to be a lot of capital that's available that can be accessed. So, I'd say I was a step ahead, right? And being a step ahead, I knew how to prepare myself and the business to be able to take advantage of those opportunities. And right now, I'm just in a season of just realizing those opportunities and then just accelerating from there.
Accelerating. And I think just for the benefit of the Trailblazer community, because I'm very passionate about the pension fund industry, one of those requirements is 30% of the assets have to be invested in Lesotho.
Yes.
So when you look at the ecosystem, like you rightfully mentioned, is when all this capital comes in, and I think currently there's around 12 pension funds registered with the central bank. Now, if each one has to comply with a 30%, it's a lot of money in our context that's flowing into the market or the economy, right? That needs to be invested by somebody. So when you start to see new asset managers registering, popping up and stuff like that, it really says that, yeah. So very interesting. And in your view, how important is it, especially for young business owners, to invest in personal development, go to school, develop themselves? What benefit does that have for their businesses and for themselves?
Man, it's everything, right? Before your business becomes an Apple or a Microsoft or whatever, it's about the entrepreneur. You are basically the business, right? And investors invest in the person behind the business.
Sure.
So you need to be a master or an expert in what you do, right? So if you cannot convince someone, the next person, that you know what you're doing, you're the best person at what you're doing, then you're not so useful to them, right? And you can access that finance. So it's important to develop yourself intellectually, professionally, not even just go to school or get a degree, just in the way that you conduct yourself. You're a brand, or you represent what you do, so you need to understand, the economy, you need to understand the industry that you operate in, you need to understand, like, you have to be a master, essentially, in your field and in your sphere. Otherwise, no one's going to invest you, no one's going to back you.
Nobody's going to back you. Earlier on, I wanted to ask you a question about being a serial entrepreneur. The last time we spoke, you were 4 businesses in, about to launch the 5th one, right? Still blows my mind how somebody can have 4 businesses, big businesses that are growing at different stages and what have you not, and with the 5th one launching. And I'm assuming since then, the 5th one is Prime Capital. I stand to be corrected. How has, okay, tell us a bit about the 4 businesses that you have very briefly, and then zone into Prime Capital, which I want to focus on for today's conversation.
Quick state, right? The average billionaire has 7 income streams
Sure.
from 7 different
Sure.
businesses. 1 in 9 businesses only makes it. 1 in 9 startups only make it. So for you to be a billionaire, if we just take probability, 9 times 7, that's 63. You have to try 63 times to find your 7, right? So you have to keep on innovating. You have to keep on building. That's how you ultimately get there. So in terms of the experience and where I'm at right now, man, I'm doing a lot. Like, I'm doing a whole lot here in Lesotho, in South Africa. I've got different structures. I've got different holdcos, like holding companies. I've started to do some bit of investments. I'm investing in other businesses. I'm learning a lot about mergers and acquisitions. I'm learning more about, horizontal and vertical integrations. I'm doing a lot.
You're doing a lot.
Yeah.
And that's good. I mean, age allows, opportunities, the ecosystem allows. So I don't see why anybody else can't be doing a lot. I always say, if you're depending on one stream of income, you are literally one paycheck away from poverty. So for me, when you also give those stats and the context that you just laid to say that if you want to be a billionaire, you need to be doing this, that, and not everything's going to work out. So it's exciting to see and hear young people like yourself being intentional about doing the work.
Yeah. I mean, take an example. So the guys that inspire me, the people that I read about is the Afrikaners. I think what they've built is phenomenal. So one standout, let's take Johan Rupert. How many businesses does he own?
Dude, like, I don't know.
I mean, he owns everything. Probably
Sure.
something in this room he owns.
I don't know. Sure.
Even the toothpaste, the toothbrush that you use in the morning, the banking that you use to finance your house, the banking that you use to finance your car, like, the guy owns everything.
Sure.
He's got well over 100 companies under his stable between Richmond and between his other holdcos. So the sky's the limit.
The sky's the limit. Let's talk about Prime Capital. 3 years since you launched or opened the doors. How has the journey been?
Interesting. I think when Prime Capital started, I thought it would be a simple plug and play solution, because I had vast experience on the South African economy and the South African market, and where the level of SMEs and SME finance credit gap at the time. And I was like, definitely Lesotho is an emerging economy, same problem. All you need to do is just raise the capital to fill the problem, and create impact and create change. Then I got onto the ground and I realized that, if it's a level, if maybe we're on level 3, I actually realized we're on level 1. The problem is not necessarily capital, right? The problem is, how do I build a formal business?
A formal business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right? Because if your business is not formalized or your business is not well structured, then it does not attract capital. Right? You don't have the basics in place. You don't have basic operating procedures. You don't have a business model. You don't understand your business model canvas. You don't understand your revenue. There are a lot of people that I've interacted with who think they're making money, but they're not. He sees all that revenue coming in and he thinks he's making money.
Operational costs
are high. Cost of sales is high. So no one can finance such a business. So yeah, I think that's what quickly showed me that, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I think that's how Prime Cubate also just came in through as like an enterprise support organization to say there's a gap that needs to be filled, right? Yes, capital is a problem. We have a massive credit gap in this country and in the economy, but over and beyond that, people just don't know how to structure their businesses to attract capital. You know, people are not investor ready. How do you get this business to become investable? How do you prepare to become investor ready? You know, people don't have go mutuna. I feel like just to have a business, get trade, I get my tax clear, I get my trader's license, certificate of incorporation, trader's license, keeping an accounting to renew it. But there's more to business than that.
There's more to business. And I think for me, it's a nice segue back to your passion for SMEs or micro small businesses, right? In your perspective, are we as a country, are we as an industry, different industries, doing everything that we can to support micro small businesses? And I think one of the key things I ask is you'll be a small business owner, you supply a big organization, and just to get the payment terms from a cash flow perspective, it'll take up to 60 days to get paid, you know. So are we, in your view, are we doing enough to support small businesses, which are claimed to be the backbone of the economy?
No, we are not. That's an example. You know, government is taking 4 months, 120 days to settle most of its suppliers, sometimes even 6 months. So that's crippling your cash flows.
Sure.
Right. So I think SMME support, you know, doesn't just take an institution like a bank or a financial institution. It's everyone. It's the corporates, it's the government, it's having the right legislations in place. You know, so just a few weeks back, I was at the financial inclusion launch of the SMME strategy for Lesotho,
Yes.
which took place a couple of weeks back. You know, and like you said, SMMEs are the backbone of this country, right? There has, from 2016, I think, to date, there's been an increase of over 60% in terms of new SMMEs.
I think now we are approaching almost 180,000.
Yes.
If my numbers
140,000.
Yeah.
140,000 SMMEs with about 112,000 entrepreneurs.
Sure.
Creating 255,000 jobs, which is a total of about 350 odd thousand jobs. That's about 26% of the labor force of this country.
Sure.
That's just SMMEs. No government involvement, no private sector, no corporate. Right. So, and I think that one of the biggest challenging things for me is 140,000 businesses, and 79% of them cannot access any form of credit. Like, only 7% can borrow from the banks or qualify to borrow from the banks. About 3% from microfinance institutions, and 79% just don't borrow at all.
So how do they grow?
That is a very good question.
The leverage.
You know,
how do they grow?
I think that's the sad thing. They don't grow because they're scared of debt. You know, I don't know now who lied to us as Basotho, who lied to, you know, the black community to say debt is bad.
Debt is bad.
You know, taking debt is bad. Like debt, I don't believe in debt. You know, owing someone like Tekane, like, tell me, what's the biggest company in the world that you know?
I'm still caught up on that what you just said now. Anyway,
tell me, what is the biggest company that you know in the world? In terms of market capitalization. Apple. You know, Apple is sitting, you can check this, sitting on about $100 billion worth of debt.
Why do you think we are so afraid of debt?
I think it's because of the examples that we've seen.
Sure.
You know, people borrow, but they don't do anything productive. You know, you borrow, you buy a car, you borrow, you build a house. You know, you think you're investing in an asset. I mean, how is your house an asset? You know, I mean, you have to maintain it every month, right? You have to maintain it every now and again. So
you have to change the paving.
You have to change the paving.
You have to paint the house every now and then.
If you're living in SA, for example, you have to pay rates every day, every month, taxes, all these many. So I think it's just examples of people who had. Actually, let's go back. I think it's financial education. Yeah. We are not educated about money. Conversations about money are not had.
Still a taboo.
It's a big taboo. I mean, when you look at white people, man, you know, I have a couple of white friends. Some of my clients, and they say, like, these guys view money differently. Like, to them, money is a tool. You know, money is like ownership. I want to own it.
And does it circulate enough?
You know, these guys understand that I don't mind borrowing 10 million to go make 15 million at a cost of capital of what? Prime -1, -2. Like I'm profitable. So if you don't borrow, how are you going to grow? Take Apple, for example, $100 billion worth of debt, right? And all this debt they're using to reinvest into their operations. Cost them $100 to make an iPhone. They're selling for $899. They've sorted the marketing out in terms of how we market and sell this brand. So they're taking all this debt to reinvest, make more money, and so I don't understand.
You don't understand. And I think I wanna contrast the two, right? When you look at personal debt, people are very prone to taking debt. Like you mentioned, they take debt to buy homes, ba reka makoloi a turu, ba finance a lifestyle. But when it comes to small businesses, couple micro small businesses, there's a big reluctance ya hore ke tshaba ho kolota. Even if you're to borrow money from family and friends, it's if you're borrowing, say, for example, 20,000 malut to finance an order, it'll be I don't want to do that. Lay the other person on the other side, which is the family or relative. Ke kadima tukiso 20,000 to let's there's also that.
So you see, that right there's the problem. You're not segregating. There's Tukiso and then there's Tukiso P2I Limited. Who's borrowing the money?
Tukiso P2I Limited.
So that's what you need to sell to this person. So the problem is when we see a business, we want to attach it to a human being.
Sure.
So that's why there's the reluctancy to borrow, because I feel like I, as Tekane, I'm borrowing, right, the money, but I'm not borrowing the money.
But I know you.
Yes, you know me, but
Prime Capital is something
yeah,
else.
no, you know me. Yes, you know me. You can create your assessment in terms of will I pay you back or not. But look at what are you investing in, or rather, what are you borrowing into? I'm showing you to say, TK, here's my order, 20,000. I'm going to get paid by X corporate 25 or 30,000. I'll be able to pay you back with 10% interest.
Sure.
Right. That is the fundamental. That's what's on the table. It's got nothing to do with me. So
how do we change that mindset in your view? What do we need to do to change that mindset? And I think just after that, we're going to take a quick break and then continue with the conversation. But how do we change that mindset that we have as a nation?
I think it starts grassroots. We have to educate children from today about money. Money should stop being a taboo. Understand what is good debt, what is bad debt, right? Understand. I think, when I was growing up, I used to read a lot of Robert Kiyosaki's books. Cash flow quadrants, Rich Dad Poor Dad. People have their opinions about that, but for me, I feel like that's where I learned a lot of my analysis on business, cash flows, etc. So we need to start learning these things from an early age, right? And I'll give you an example. Like, you're not an accountant, but I know you know what an asset is.
Sure.
Right? Look at the balance sheet.
Sure.
An asset is made up of equity and liabilities.
Sure.
Right? Now the problem is, Rona, as black people, as Basotho, we see asset is equal to equity. But there's a liabilities component which entails the debt. Right? So I'll give you an example. You want to start something, you're going to start a business to the extent of which you have equity. So if all I have is 10,000 rands in savings, what are you going to do? You're going to start a business relative to that, right? So unfortunately, you're starting a small business and your business will remain small for as long as you don't use leverage, right? Whereas if you take your 10,000, and then the other L, you go and borrow from friends, fools, family, whatever, another 100,000. Now you have 110,000. Now you're building a bigger business. And the problem is what I've seen, especially in the black community. Like, we are starting very small businesses.
Scarcity mindset.
Literally, because we're building a business relative to how much I have, right? And the problem is when these small businesses don't end up working out, right? Then we start to become angry. Then we start to resent life and other people. And then when you see other people that are being successful, who understand and took the risk, to borrow and do greater and bigger things, then you start to become jealous of these people, start to call them names. This one is connected to politicians. this one borrowed has access to this and this and that, you know. So you just start to become a resentful person. You know, you resent life, you resent successful people. You know, we said there, no, the rupees are what they are today because the apartheid system benefited them, you
Sure.
know. So
And it's interesting. Just before we started shooting, while waiting for the team and the crew and you to arrive, I was working on my weekly newsletter, and it really centered around the money scripts. You know, what we say about money, what we believe about money. There's this thing, yeah, there's chelete in Tabahui. Money is the root of all evils, you know. And Hans Ubajwalo, it actually got me thinking about that, to say that maybe what we also need to start doing as Black people in particular is rewiring the conversations we have around money, rewiring how we relate to money, and the kind of financial literacy that you mentioned early on. But I want to take a quick break now. And this episode is proudly sponsored by TKO Financial Wellness and Advisory. If you don't know what TKO Financial Wellness and Advisory is, the next video will definitely explain all of that. And yes, Mr. Tekane spoke about the importance of financial literacy and financial well-being through Prime Capital, his company, and through TKO Financial Wellness and Advisory. We do offer initiatives that try to promote financial education and financial literacy so that we are able to leverage debt and use debt responsibly to grow, scale, and build profitable businesses. We'll be back in a short bit. Let's enjoy the next video. Welcome back to the second half of the conversation, where we are talking to Mr. Leverage himself, breaking down how we can use debt strategically to grow, scale, and take our businesses to the next level. The one question I wanted to ask him, though, is a few years ago when I had him on the podcast, what's his relationship with his money? So I'm going to ask the question very differently, to say, if your bank account could speak now, what would your bank account say?
I love you too.
I love you too. That is so dope.
You know, like I told you last time, and like I have a very good relationship with money.
Sure.
Right. I love it and it loves me. You know?
And the Mojolo is Jola
like,
rising.
you know,
very
like,
beautifully.
like we are good. But I
Sure.
think in the last couple of years, you know, I've become more intentional with saving more than I spend. Right. And I think the reason for that is because, one, age. I think, you know, I'm not getting young anymore. You know,
Dude,
I have to start thinking.
the last time we spoke, you were around 25. I
Yeah.
think you had just turned 25.
Yeah, I just turned 25.
Yeah.
Now I'm 28, turning 29 soon.
And says age is getting
No,
older.
age is getting the better of me. Man. I'm 30 next year, you know.
Sure.
And, you know, I'm starting to think of other things now. Starting to think of, you know, one day starting a family, you know, a wife, children. So I have to think strategically.
Private school and
you know.
stuff.
So I plan in advance. So I've started to literally, you know, save more than I spend. And yeah, so I've been much more intentional.
Much more intentional.
With doing that.
As a 28-year-old, one of the things that a lot of people your age experience is financial peer pressure, right? We want to be seen living certain lifestyles, driving certain cars, doing this, doing that. How do you stay grounded and literally focus on what it is that you're doing? How do you avoid the noise around people who are 28-year-old? I'd even argue, say, 25 to 30. There's that peer pressure to say, you're making money, you need to be doing this, you need to be doing that. How do you stay grounded amidst the noise?
So that's an interesting question, right? I'm 28, but most of my friends are like 38, 40, 42. You know, I think in my 20s, I only have 2 or 3 friends.
Sure.
That are around about my age. And I spend a little more time with the older guys, you know, and the older guys have seen it all. So they're like friends but mentors.
Friends but mentors.
Yeah, in a sense, you know, they don't move like this, move like this, you know. So I think I'm just literally sucked out of this whole mindset in terms of, you know, the peer pressure and, you know, wanting to live a certain way. Like I just do me on my terms when I want. So I wouldn't necessarily say I'm faced with that problem. Yeah. And I think what people or young people should rather focus on, just focus on you.
Focus on you.
That's it. You know?
Easier said than done, though.
No, literally just focus on you. If you need to leave social media for you to be able to focus on you, then do that.
And you did leave social media for a while. Are you back now?
Yes, no, I'm back. I left. I did leave for a while. I just felt like I needed to reset.
Needed to reset.
Yeah.
And talking about mentorship, through Prime Cubate, you are doing something to mentor young business owners, right? How important is business mentorship, and business coaching, in your opinion, especially for entrepreneurs?
Man, it's everything. Like you need to literally follow in the footsteps of someone who's walked the journey before you, right? So, like the mentors that I have in my life, they've got me into rooms I never thought I'd get into. Introduced me to people that I thought I would never meet. They've helped me to be able to grow my business. Get customers that you never thought you would. Strategic partnerships that you never thought you would. So you always need someone to be there for you, to guide you, to handhold you. And I think it's a big problem because in Lesotho, for example, there's no platform for mentorship or a platform for business coaching where the older generation transfers skills to the younger generation. So it's like everybody's trying to do it themselves. So it's absolutely critical. Like I'll give you an example. I've got this one mentor. He is a board member of like a JSC listed company. So actually told me a very funny story the other day. Is like, when you're young, you should be focusing on building business. Don't be taken by the flashy life, the cars, the this, the that. It's like, this one day we went so the company is a mining company. So it was opening a second mine in the Free State. So he's like, so all the whole board was going to like a private, what you call this? Like a private airport so that they could board a plane to go and have an aerial view of the mine. So it's like, we all get there, all of us, board members, everybody. One is driving a not a Rolls Royce, a Bentley. Others are in 7 Series. It's all us black guys, And then comes, the chairman and the CEO of the company, referring to Ernest Oppenheimer and, no, not Ernest Oppenheimer, Nicky Oppenheimer and Jonathan Oppenheimer. It's like they got there in a smart car. There's 2 of them squashed in this car. All of us are driving like German cars. And when they jump off that car, they're jumping into the 70 million euro private jet, taking all of us to go and have an aerial view as board members, an aerial view. So it's like, wealth is silent, man. Riches are loud. All of us, we came with the flashy cars, and you see that on the road everywhere you go. But wealth is silent. Like that guy, you see him in a smart car, but you don't know he's got a 70 million euro jet, that he flies to and from London with. So basically what he was trying to instill in me is, rather take your money and allocate it towards building wealth more than it is building riches. Because riches can easily become a lifestyle habit, right? But wealth is silent, man. Like, I'm sure you've met a lot of wealthy people, which you'd be like, oh, this guy, is he really the guy?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm to be billionaire, man. So I think that's definitely a concept. Like in my 30s, that's definitely the level that I want to get into. Like, I want you to see me wearing Pep store clothes and and you don't know, man, I'm coining it hard.
The bank account is saying
it. The bank account is saying
there, like, I love you too.
I love you too. So
I love you
my
too.
mentorship is important. So with Prime Cubate, what we are doing actually is we're building like an enterprise support organization. Remember I told you when I started Prime Capital was to solve the semi-credit gap. SMEs weren't able to access capital in Lesotho. Still are. And the gap is widening because there are more SMEs coming into the market, right? So with Prime Cubate, it's more about, incubation and acceleration. This is to prepare SMEs to become funding ready, right? So we help you structure your business. We help you build a data room to attract investors. We help you understand your revenue model. We help you understand your business model canvas. Basically, we assist you to go from at ideation concept phase all the way to like post revenue, to a point where you can start generating revenue. You can start establishing yourself within the market, signing MOUs or LOEs with different stakeholders, and I think our vision is we want to basically, be one of the people who take Lesotho owned businesses as an export out of the country, basically taking Lesotho to the world,
Sure.
like
To the world. And I think one of the key things, I went to a very sad funeral. Well, it's sad in the sense that the person who passed away was very young. Baka Matos, her soul rest in peace, and she was really building, trailblazing. And one of the key things that stuck with me at her funeral was, in terms of legacy and succession planning, are we doing enough to say that Prime Capital is here, TKO Financial Wellness is here, but beyond the people who founded the businesses, can these businesses grow and continue in their absence? So, in your view, is how important is it for small, medium enterprises to start thinking about succession planning, to start documenting their processes, to have standard operating procedures like you mentioned earlier on? How important are those things, especially for small business owners?
right, every entrepreneur exits their business. Like it's a guarantee. You know, white people exit by selling, like selling the equity and jumping. Like I'll give you an example, like the Oppenheimers, they sold their stake in the BS to Anglo American, exited the business. But us as black people, we always exit by death. Like our exit is death, and after that, that's it. I mean, if you look at even Lilo Sutuma, like a lot of great people, from 20, 30 years ago, who built amazing businesses. Once they died, businesses die with them. So I think it's a very difficult one, because some people say, okay, maybe I'll take my family, or I'll take my son, or I'll take my child, introduce them to the business. I think that's what the Indian community has mastered quite well, the Jewish community as well, the Lebanese as well. They've mastered succession planning in terms of that the next generation should outlive the current generation. So with us, it's very difficult, and I think that's one of the biggest hindrances of that limits us from being able to build generational wealth, because there's only one master, there's only one person who has all the the recipe, the sauce, if you want to put it that way. And once he or she is gone, that's it, unfortunately. So I think we need to start potentially documenting processes. We need to start building processes, like we said, have SOPs that are well documented, such that the next person, when they come in, they know, okay, this is how things are done. This is how we follow through. Understand the financial aspect of the business, because that's also critical. Who are the key customers? Who are the key clients? Who are the key role players within the ecosystem? So, yeah, look, it's a difficult one, but I think also having partners helps.
Having partners helps, yeah.
So when you do a business, like when you go into a partnership with someone, you run a business like an entity, or you establish something that I hate actually. Well, I used to hate, now I like establish a board, right?
Board of advisories,
not advisories, but a board of directors.
Yeah,
have non-executive directors who sit on your board, have executive directors who sit on your board, who also drive the vision in terms of the direction that the company needs to go, right? So earlier on, when I gave you an example about when we were doing the cap raise, so one of the requirements is to establish a board. And the reason I used to hate it is because I used to feel like I'm employed within my own company, because now we vote, we elect a chairman. Now any board member at any given point in time calls me, hey man, can you send me the latest report, or can I, so it started feeling like, it feels a little bit like you're being micromanaged, or you report to someone else.
In your own business.
In your own business, I'm like, how does this work? Like, you guys are taking away the entire, drive of entrepreneurship out of me. But, for example, the current board members that I have in my SE company, like, they have also just opened doors, in terms of market. They get you in rooms that would have taken me 3 months to get into. Or 3 years to get into. I can get there within 3 months. So just leveraging different relationships, having proper structures in terms of documenting meetings, what's being discussed, what's happening in these board meetings. So I think one of the ways we can mitigate that is to start building our businesses like you're an apple.
Sure.
Establish a board if you have to, even if it's just 2 or 3 people. Document everything, meetings. Don't just speak to yourself or speak to your employees or your like everything should be documented such that when someone comes in, it's easy for me to extract the minutes, it's easy for me to extract the board papers, it's easy for me to extract all of these so I can acquaint myself, know what's happening. So I think that's, in my opinion, the biggest thing that we could potentially do.
And I think when you talked about partners, I think I also do want to give a shout out to Nectar by Bokang Matlosa. May her soul rest in peace again. Nectar was a big partner to the podcast as well from our early days when we started Talks Over Linford. So shout out to Nectar, and I do hope that it will continue beyond her because she really started something incredible and amazing. So shout out to Nectar and Bokang Matlosa. May her soul rest in peace. And I think just to wrap up the conversation, from a Prime Capital perspective or from your perspective, what does the future look like? But before you get into the future, how was your travel experience overseas?
Ish, man,
And how important is it for us to every now and then take a break and then just travel, get inspired, re-inspired, and so on and so forth?
Man, it's a breath of fresh air, right? You get to see how different people are living, right? So I don't know, some people when they get to a place, you want to see the top tourist attractions,
Sure.
right? So I'm different in the sense that I want to go to the club. Like I want to see how do people party
How
here?
do they party here? Okay.
Not that I love clubbing, but I just
Sure.
want to see how do people
Because
behave.
that's how they spend their money.
Yeah,
as
that's how they spend their money, right? During the day, I want to see how do people like live day to day, and first world countries like Europe, America, you realize that having a car is like nobody needs a car there.
I was in New York 2023, October.
I was in August.
Out clubbing. We went out yes, I know we missed we went clubbing we left the house at midnight. Got onto the train, went partying, came back on the train.
In Brooklyn. Where were you partying?
Hey, dude, ask me questions in the live.
I hope it wasn't Brooklyn.
Ask me questions here on the line, but it was lit. And the morning after, I could tell that I was a wounded soldier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you see, these people live different. They're wild, eh?
Sure.
Like white people are wild. But yeah, man, it's an interesting experience. People prioritize different things. People put their money in. For example, like I went to watch Formula One. Like, man, I would have never thought I would be within 300,000 people. Like at a go. Like that's how many people were, at the circuit, like on race day. Like you just get to see people are really, really just put money in things they're passionate about. So I think it's important just to get a different perspective of how other people are living, how other races are doing things. Because when you're stuck in one environment, your brain you're only limited to what you see.
Yeah.
And you end up just drinking and
travel, spend a bit of money to go see other parts of the world and how people are living.
Yeah.
Plans for 2025 and beyond.
For the first time in my life, this year is the year that I don't have any New Year's resolutions. Because I've just told myself this year I'm doing one thing and one thing only, which is I'm just putting my head down and I'm working. That's it.
So that's a goal. This year is the year of working.
No, it's not a goal. It's just, every day you work, right? You wake up every morning to work.
Sure.
So I just that's all I want to focus on.
Sure. Okay, maybe not a goal. Maybe that's what you're focusing on.
Yeah. So
the focus is work.
Yeah. That's it. I don't have goals in terms of, okay, I want to have made 5 million, or I want to have made X amount, or I want to have saved X amount. I'm just like, what? I'm just continuing and channeling my life towards working and attracting opportunities. That's it.
Attracting opportunities.
That's it.
Dude, that is super dope. I'm inspired.
That's it.
I am always inspired chatting to you. I'm inspired by your limited online presence and what you post and what you share. I am inspired by just how you are moving and focusing on your own business and growing the business and taking it to the next level. So I'm very inspired.
No, thank you so much. I'm also inspired by you.
You should be inspired by me.
I wish I had more time on my hands. I really want to have a podcast thing, and just talk about business, money, just interview Like I really wish I could do it. Like that's one of my
We can
goals.
create time.
You know,
I see Mr. Mazoso Photography. I see Biza Street behind the camera. They are very business orientated, so it's possible. It's possible.
no, thank you.
All right. Guys, you've been listening to another dope episode on My Money Adventures podcast where we're talking everything business, leveraging debt, and literally just focusing on your business. So, this episode is also available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Remember to leave a review because we want to hear from you. We want to talk to you. We want to engage with you. So, let us know what you think about this conversation. If you do have any questions for Mr. Tekane, you can also drop them below. He will definitely respond. Failing which, I will send the questions to him and then I'll post the responses. Responses, that's the correct term. Yeah. Do not miss out on the upcoming TKO event happening on the 26th of April in Maseru. It's the TKO Financial Wellness Wealth Branch. We have amazing speakers who are going to talk everything wealth creation and how to build an investment portfolio, not just for yourself, but also for your business. So we will definitely see you there. Tickets are selling out very fast. I think we had around 50% of the tickets sold. So do not waste any more time. I will link the link to buy the tickets below and all the details regarding the Wealth Branch 2025. And again, this episode, like I mentioned, available on Spotify. So our Spotify and Apple community, we do see you. Leave your comments. I always make sure to respond to all of them. A big shout out to my creative team behind the lens, always showing up on time, delivering dope content, Matsoso Photography. And of course, on the audio is Mr. B's Street Inc., dropping gems as usual. So do not sleep on them. If you're a podcaster like myself, do not sleep on them. I'm very selfish with my team, but when I say these are the go-to guys in the industry, I absolutely mean it. Until the next video, remember to give this video a like, share it, and subscribe because we're trying to get to 4,000 subs. I mean, I'm trying to get to 10 actually, but I mean, at this point in time, I just need like 80, 69, 69, 67 actually to get to 4K subs. Let's make this podcast the biggest in the country for everything finance, business, and retirement conversations. I will see you guys in the next one. Cheers. Boom.